Welcome to the world united. Welcome to the world united.
Our next speaker is Wendy. Wendy Byrd, since 2002, has worked in developing countries teaching disadvantaged women skills in self-reliance and vocational training. She's created a non-profit organization based on the initiatives of micro enterprise, training educational scholarships and clothing, food, educational medicines, and hygiene supplies. Wendy has done research since 2010 on the topic of connection crisis. As technology became more advanced and utilized by younger and younger age bracket, she noticed the uptick of depression and mental illness, anxiety, suicide, ideation, ADHD, and other limitations in attention span. She has given keynote speeches on the subjects throughout the US and globally. Thank you so much, Wendy. Your topic for today is addiction to connection, a solution for global. Over to you, Wendy. Welcome on board.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having this conference. I think the timeliness behind it just couldn't be more profound. And a special thanks to you, Dr. Yugandhar, and everybody that's here in this venue. So I'd actually like to start with a story and hopefully it will resonate with the masses. One night, my husband was in the middle of an online pirate treasure hunting game, so a virtual game, and our oldest daughter called. She had a need for him to come over to the house quickly, and so he took off and he left me in charge. He said, I need you to step in on this game. We've got to go find this next treasure. And I don't want to let the team down. It's a worldwide game. So there was teammates from all over. And he said, it's going to take about 30 minutes and we can't miss out on capturing this treasure. Well, I'm always an individual who's willing to help out somebody in the time of need. And so the first thing you need to know, though, is I don't online game at all. And I do not know how to actually navigate the different keystrokes. So the second thing that I should make you aware of is that my husband was probably really, really desperate that I step in for him because he never would have asked me otherwise. So this game was obviously really important. So as we jumped into the game, it quickly became apparent that this virtual game was well done. There was beautiful ocean scenery, incredible palm trees. There was an actual boat. You felt like you were riding in the waves of this boat and about to go off into just the unknown. It was very realistic. And I was filled with wonder as I found myself like navigating the ship and driving. And my avatar just bounced around like a real person. And of course, you're hooked up to mics, you're hooked up to the keyboard. And I saw as we were headed toward the slush island that another pirate ship came up alongside of ours. And all of a sudden over the mic, I heard somebody say, they found us, load the cannons. We've got to, throw some cannons at them. And I was all of a sudden going, I don't even know what I'm doing. And so I quickly typed into the chat box, how do we load the cannons? And somebody typed back, you depress Q and W while pulling down the command key and hitting shift and the letter J. And so I quickly tried to do that. And the next thing I knew, my avatar went sailing across the ship and landed in the ocean, flashing bright colors, and I died. And there was dead silence over the mic, and a couple people all of a sudden said, did you just launch your avatar into the ocean? And I quickly typed back, I think so. What was I supposed to do? And then somebody else piped in and said, "This isn't Richard playing anymore, is it?" And I replied, "No, this is his wife. He had to run an errand. I'm who you're stuck with. Feel free to help me navigate this." And the individuals just started laughing, quickly tried to help me figure out how to use the tools to my advantage. And within a few minutes, it became very evident I was not going to be any assistance at all in helping these people find this treasure hunt. So, as you can tell from this experience, when we don't have the right tools at hand, it becomes challenging to know how to navigate the waters that we find ourselves in. And this is really scary because when we don't have the right tools, when we don't know how to use the tools that we have, we are, I guess, oh, I don't want to say stuck, but we are at a disadvantage. And when we all found ourselves in the midst of this global pandemic, we found ourselves floundering around in unknown territory. We knew that we wanted to show up as our best selves, but we also knew that we did not know exactly what we were dealing with. We knew there were tools in front of us, but we did not know which tools to use, or better yet, how to use them or when. We found our minds were filled with dozens of questions, and we desperately didn't know how to navigate the chore before us. We wanted it to be more like Bradley Cooper's navigation in his movie Limitless. We wanted it to be intuitive, natural, and to just come naturally to us. As human beings, we are comprised of body, mind, and spirit. For decades, as greater achievements have been defined in the health and wellness world and in intellectual advances, our spiritual growth has been stymied. The fact that this conference is on the spirituality of self speaks volumes. I know that as we learn to connect our spiritual self congruently to our core identity, we will be able to gain a greater ability to live in harmony with all of humanity and avoid the pitfalls of addiction. From a spiritual perspective, the perilous condition of the world today is caused at its root from humanity being disconnected and incongruent with who they really are at their core. Their core identity and values have not yet been defined, articulated, or lived into. We are unsure of who we are, where we are going, and why we are experiencing this earth life. This is happening even though we live in a world that has never been more connected externally from the point of view of technology. Within our pockets, we all hold the ability to be able to connect with another individual, another human being, within a nanosecond. It's a simple swipe to the left, a flick of the finger across the screen. Yet, according to the statistics, mental illness and suicide are at all-time highs. We, as a human species, are experiencing greater levels of loneliness, depression, and suicide ideation, uncertainty, isolation, and addiction than at any other time in the history of our world. One of the largest running studies being performed at Harvard began in 1939 with 75 individuals, some from the Boston tenements. The others were from Harvard. These 18-year-old men were followed for their entire lives. And now, today, their great-grandchildren are part of this study, and it is expanded to over 2,500 participants. The purpose of this study was to identify what defines true happiness by the end of your lifetime. In the original interview, labs were drawn, questions were asked, brains were scanned, questionnaires were filled out, and the individual lives were assessed. The ultimate result was not as predicted. It was thought at the onset that wealth or fame was going to be the predictor of true happiness. But on the contrary, the people who fared the best were the ones who had established strong, intimate connections and leaned into their relationships with family, friends, and community. These were the individuals who had less memory loss, less physical ailments, less pain, and greater longevity due to the strength, consistency, and depth of being connected with someone. They knew that when the going got tough, someone was there for them. They found it was not only the quantity of individual connections, but the quality of those relationships. And without them, people died earlier. They struggled with memory issues, they experienced greater physical ailments, and sadly, they died earlier because of loneliness. So why are we experiencing a global epidemic of loneliness today? I would suggest it stems from a lack of understanding of how to use our free will and choice and our actions in alignment with a higher connection, a desire to seek, know, and understand exactly how our choices have aligned with the identity of who we are and how those choices and actions will impact others in a compassionate, unconditionally loving way. We need to know how each of our choices will impact the world we currently reside in. This lack of unexplored identity, this lack of connection, has led many spiraling toward a rapid descent into addiction. They are choosing to numb out or medicate their way through the unknowns. They are unable to process uncomfortable feelings of disconnection. They are struggling to comprehend and define what the feelings mean to them and how they are impacting them. Rather than, as Rumi said, take a cup of tea, sit beneath the tree, and invite the feeling to sit with you for a while as you sip your tea together. Instead, we choose to exist on the surface level of never-ending social media scrolls, autoplay Netflix binges, fast food lines, virtual entertainment, drugs, alcohol, and addictive substances, anything that will distract us and allow us to numb those hard feelings and keep us from sitting with them under our tree. This escape does artificially free us from accountability, but in reality, it is imprisoning us into a caged life of fear, dissatisfaction, and isolation. Because being disconnected does not have discrimination. There is no barrier of entry. From the elderly in care facilities to those on the front lines that are offering unconditional care at great sacrifice, from millennials to Gen Xers, from preschool-age children who are now being forced to view the world with a masked face, to parents who are battling changes in careers, education, family dynamics, and economic upheaval at unprecedented rates. No one is immune from this toll. Yet we are all empowered with the internal stamina to define for ourselves and align within ourselves our own core identity. This is the greatest blessing of the global pandemic. Those that were open to this beckoning were challenged to go within themselves and define a new version of themselves that resonated more intimately with who they wanted to be and desired to be, regardless of who they may have once been. Those who accepted this challenge with grace and humility are those who went inward. They asked the hard questions, knowing as they entered those challenging conversations that they would be trading long-term dysfunction for some short-term discomfort. They intrinsically knew that each symptom of disconnection, each choice to ignore or bury their head in the sand, each action of vitriol or anger or divisiveness was actually an additional mask covering the need for true spiritual connection with themselves and their higher power. Yet once this true higher connection can congruently be defined and established within our own belief system, we find we're able to contribute at a greater level to all of humanity. Because the secret to avoiding this downward spiral of addiction is intimate connection. We must use our free will with the input of a higher connection so that every challenge can be seen with a larger perspective. The ability to do this is by establishing a connection to God, source, or higher power, establishing a connection within ourselves, establishing a connection to others, and establishing a connection to our environment. As we allow love and compassion to come into our lives, compassion for self and others at all times, using love as the vehicle, we will find that our internal changes will begin to harmonize with our external choices. Our behavior, values, and philosophies are uplifted and leveled up into a real spiritual connection. This then becomes a way of living our life, not an organized religion. It allows us to see each living entity with equality and unity, knowing that we are all connected to the same source and we each contain a spark of divinity embedded within us. Once our capacity for unconditional love pulls from within ourselves, intertwined with the love that God has for each of us as his children, we find the diminished pull towards addictive tendencies, because we then interact and experience authentic joy and intimate connections with all of humanity. Progress is defined by improving our level of consciousness. We make that progress through interconnection by following 4 Sanskrit practices: satsang, associating with like-minded people that inspire us; satana, a meditation, internally nourishing ourselves through a spiritual practice; sakirtan, which is harmonizing our hearts with a divine focus and purpose; and sadhakar, our character and our identity, changing greed to generosity, despair into hope, and hate into love. These Sanskrits awaken a dynamic compassion and love within us. It is one that is thoughtful and committed. It is one that is willing to take on another person's suffering or happiness as though it was our own. For this unusual year of 2020, we can see that surviving this pandemic with a stronger spiritual connection is vital to being able to establish true intimate connections, not only with each other, but with the environment we live in. We need to remember to use our toolbox, our little keys on the keyboard, to help us navigate properly through what we are all experiencing, knowing that this mindset shift is actually trending us toward a more intentional awareness that will help us in all of our futures as we connect towards each other.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you for telling us it's time to connect from within and to resilience. Over to Sir. So on behalf of the World United, World Parliament on Spirituality 3, this is a small token of our appreciation, Wendy, for being an esteemed speaker in the 3rd edition of the World Parliament on Spirituality 2020, North America. Thank you so much for being a part of our sessions, and thank you for giving such beautiful insights. Thank you so much, Wendy.